I will never again live in an older building just because it's cheaper, and here's why. A year before, I landed my first job in another city. I was eager for the opportunity, but stressed about my tight budget. Finding affordable accommodation close to work became a priority to save on expenses. After scouting around, I stumbled upon a very old building. Its walls had turned black with age, and the furniture showed signs of wear and tear. Expecting such conditions for the price, I inquired about vacancies and lucked out with room 205 on the 10th floor. They handed me the keys, and I moved in immediately. It was a small one-room apartment with a tiny bathroom and an open kitchen. For a solitary person like me, it was more than sufficient. Everything went normally for the first week. I would leave for work early in the morning and return around 8. However, one night, shortly after moving in, I had some extra work to complete and ended up coming home later than usual, around midnight. The building appeared completely deserted, which was unusual. I had never seen it so empty, not a single soul in sight. I made my way through the dimly lit corridors. As I mentioned earlier, my room was on the 10th floor, so I always took the old-style elevator located at the front. It made a lot of noise when it operated. While riding the elevator, I noticed a child standing on one of the floors. I glanced at him, but I couldn't clearly see his face, only his clothes and the teddy bear he held. It struck me as strange, but I dismissed it and continued to my floor. To my surprise, when I arrived, I saw the same child already standing in the corner of the hallway. I was perplexed as to how he had arrived before me, given that I had used the elevator and he hadn't. Approaching him, I asked for his name, but he didn't reply. He simply continued to stare at me. I then inquired about where he lived, but he still didn't respond. Instead, he lifted his arm and pointed to the door right next to mine, room number 206. I took the boy to apartment 206 and knocked on the door, but there was no answer. We waited there for about 5 minutes, but nobody came. I assumed they weren't home, and I felt uneasy leaving the child alone there after midnight. So I asked him if he wanted something to eat, to which he quickly agreed. I invited him to eat at my apartment while we waited for his parents to return. I didn't have much food at home since I usually ate out and relied on instant noodles, so I quickly boiled some noodles and served them to the boy. He started eating, and we watched TV together. I tried to engage him in conversation, but he didn't respond to any of my questions. I thought perhaps he couldn't speak or was very introverted, but then he sat next to me eating without a care. After he finished eating, I asked him to take the pots and put them on the table while I cleaned up the leftovers. As he carried the noodle pots, he walked past a mirror, and I noticed there was no reflection of him. It sent a shiver down my spine, leaving me feeling uneasy and unsure of what to make of it. I quickly made my way out of the apartment. Leaving seemed like the best option at the time because the sight of someone without a reflection had genuinely scared me. I ran to the elevator, but as it descended, strange and horrifying things began happening to me. I can't even explain what it was. The lights in the hallway and elevator started flickering, and with each flicker, I saw the child from earlier on each floor getting closer and closer. His facial expressions changed with each flicker, from smiling to angry, in an indescribably creepy manner. It sent shivers down my spine. He was closest to the elevator door on the last floor, but thankfully, when I reached the ground floor, he wasn't there. I felt relief, but then my heart stopped when I heard a sound behind me. With fear and trembling legs, I slowly turned around, and he was standing behind me in the corner of the elevator, staring at me, his face rotten and his skin eaten away. That's all I remember. After a moment, I woke up to everyone surrounding me, and security was splashing water on my face. I quickly sat up and asked about the child, but they said there wasn't a single child living in the entire apartment building. I was terrified by what had happened. Without another thought, I left the building and sent a friend from work to retrieve my belongings. I never wanted to set foot in that building again. After that, for a long time, every time I closed my eyes, I could see that little boy with the rotting skin. Eventually, that vision went away, but just remembering it lowers my blood pressure to the point of almost passing out.
I have always been skeptical about the supernatural, but something happened to me when I was a child that I still can't explain. When I was 8 years old, my mom worked as a psychologist at an elementary school. After school hours, I used to accompany her to the school and wait for her to finish her work. Most of the kids had already gone home, although sometimes a few stayed for extracurricular activities like sports or art classes. While my mom attended to her last patients of the day, I entertained myself by playing in the schoolyard. I remember one day I was playing alone in the yard when I saw a boy I didn't recognize. He seemed to be my age, and although I had never seen him before, he invited me to play. He was a thin boy, with dark hair and big, bright eyes that conveyed a deep sadness. I accepted his invitation without much thought. After all, it was rare to find someone to play with at that hour. We played hide and seek, hopscotch, and even tried climbing the old trees in the yard. I was having so much fun that when my mom called me to leave, I asked her to let me stay a little longer. She said it was okay, but when I turned to keep playing, the boy had disappeared. It puzzled me, but I thought maybe he had just run home. This happened over several days. Each afternoon, the boy would appear, and we would play until my mom called me to leave. And each time, when I turned around, the boy was gone. At first, I didn't give it much thought, but one day, while we were playing, he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Do you want to stay with me in my resting place?" he asked, in a soft, melancholic voice. I didn't understand what he meant, and told him no. It sounded strange, but not enough to worry me. However, children's curiosity is powerful, and the next day, when he asked me again, I began to consider his offer. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with following him, right? A few days later, I finally agreed. Just as we were about to leave, my mom called me from the building's door. I turned to tell the boy to wait, but once again, he had disappeared. This time, however, something inside me broke. I felt an inexplicable fear, and I ran to find my mom. I told her what had happened, hoping she would tell me I was just imagining things. But her face immediately turned serious. She grabbed my hand and quickly took me to the car. During the drive home, she didn't say a word. Only when we got home and she was putting me to bed, she hugged me tightly and told me she wouldn't take me back to the school after hours. Several years passed before my mom told me the truth. One night, during a conversation about things that scared us as children, I reminded her of that experience. Her expression changed, and with a deep sigh, she began to speak. She told me that years before she started working there, a boy had died at the school. His name was Lucas. They found him in the yard, near one of the old trees where I used to play. He had fallen from a branch and hit his head. The incident was so traumatic that the tree was cut down, and a small garden was made in its place, which they called the resting place. I have often wondered if what I saw was real or just a product of my childish imagination. However, the seriousness in my mother's eyes when she told me the story convinces me that maybe there are things we simply shouldn't try to understand. Now, when I pass by that school, I look towards the yard and think of the boy who invited me to play, and a part of me always wonders what would have happened if I had accepted his invitation to his resting place. I will never know, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to.
Subscribe to the channel to hear the strangest stories of encounters with the unknown. I'll tell you the best tales of horror, mystery, and suspense. When whispers and shadows lurk in the darkness, the time for nightmares has come.
What happened to me changed my perception of life and death forever and made me believe that there is something beyond. Something really strange happened to me when I was in 6th grade. I was quite introverted and shy and had only one friend, Lily, who was also my neighbor. We used to spend most of our time together at school, often visiting each other at our homes and doing homework as well. One night, I woke up feeling thirsty, and as I went downstairs to get some water, I passed by my parents' room and overheard them whispering about something. My dad was on the phone, looking very upset, while my mom was consoling him, whispering something. It seemed worrisome to me, so I went in to ask what was happening. Suddenly, they both put on smiles and started acting normally. My mom asked me what I was doing up so late, and I told her I was thirsty. She took me to the kitchen and reassured me that they were just having a conversation and nothing was wrong. The next morning, as I went downstairs for breakfast, I noticed that my parents were acting a bit strange. They had been talking about something, but when they saw me, they quickly put on fake smiles and started eating breakfast quietly. After we finished, I asked my dad to drop me off at school, but my mom surprised me by saying that school was closed for the week. This was surprising because our final exams for 6th grade were coming up, and it was unusual for our school to be closed for more than a day or two. However, I didn't argue and returned to my room, not knowing what else to do. I was initially happy about the unexpected week off from school, but there was a feeling of unease that I couldn't shake. I sensed that something was going on that I wasn't aware of, so I decided to stay home for the entire week. During that time, Lily didn't reach out to me, and when I tried to call her, nobody answered. I couldn't get in touch with her at all. When I returned to school after the week off, I saw Lily waiting for me at the gate as usual, but her demeanor was different this time. She wasn't smiling. Instead, she looked serious. I asked her what was wrong, or if something had happened, but she denied it. I tried to brush it off, and we went to our class together. Later, I asked her why she hadn't been talking to me, or if she was upset about something, but her response was unexpected. She said she had been waiting for me all week, and the school had been open as normal. At first, I thought she was joking, but when I looked at her face, I realized she was serious. It was an awkward moment between us, unlike anything we had experienced before. Over the next month, we continued to spend time together, playing, studying, and talking as usual. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily was behaving strangely, acting more serious, and disturbed about something. No matter how many times I asked her, she didn't respond or tell me anything. Time passed like this, and before we knew it, it was time for our exams. After the exams, we had a few more vacations until the results were announced. During this time, Lily didn't contact me at all. On the day of the results, we were at school with our parents. I looked around for Lily, but nobody responded when I asked about her whereabouts. I waited for her the whole time, but she didn't show up. Finally, when the ceremony began, I heard something that froze me in my tracks and stole my breath away. The teacher announced that a student named Lily, who was in 6th grade, had passed away a month ago due to drowning in a pool. We prayed for her and were told that we would always remember her. I was in shock because I had been with her all the time. The realization that she was dead left me stunned. I immediately told my mom everything, and my parents decided to shift me to another school in the hope that I would forget what happened. I never saw her again, but I'll always remember her and what happened to me.